Cool. So, hello everyone. Welcome back to this episode with me. I'm Sneha, and today with us we have Noemi Ferrera from Spain. Noemi has about 10 years of experience as a developer and tester, and she loves studying about new technologies and implement them in the field of testing and sharing it with everyone by her blogs and by speaking in conferences. So, hi Naomi, thank you so much for
Hi,
being here. We welcome you. How are you feeling
thank you.
today?
Thank you for having me here. I'm
It's
feeling
my
great.
pleasure.
Thank you for asking. I hope you're feeling good too. How are you?
I'm doing good too. Thank you so much for asking. So Naomi, so today I wanted to talk to you a little bit about the field of test automation. What is so awesome about this field? And when someone is trying to prepare for an interview for an SDET role or a test automation role, how do they prepare and go through that process? Interview preparation strategies and all these good things. So that is what we want to talk with you today. To start with, I'd like to know what you like the most about the field of test automation.
Well, as you mentioned before, I've been a developer and I've been in test, and I started my career as a developer. I studied computer science and I got my degree and I started as a developer. I didn't know much about testing at the time because it's not something that my career was really focused on, but I always have curiosity on the field. So I kind of lied into it by a coincidence, actually, because they were looking for someone in a quality team, and I don't know. I thought that quality sounded great. I didn't know why. I just got that feeling, oh, quality, that sounds good. And I thought, okay, let's see what it is about. And I did study a little bit about it. So I just wanted to get more say field knowledge on it,
Hmm.
and that's how I got it started. And then I started to see some things that I really enjoyed. For example, when you do automation per se, my career wasn't really focused on test automation. It was like general automation, automate
Hmm.
processes, automate things that are tiring to do, right, and save people's time. And I found that's really, really, really good. I even have domotic at home, and I automate not only like not only software but also hardware, because
Hmm.
I feel it saves a lot of time for me, and I like that something is doing something for me while I can like use my time to learn or something else, or do other things that I am interested in doing. So I found that really cool. So I really liked it.
Nice. Thank you so much for sharing that. Me too. I used to do. I started as a developer intern and then moved into test automation. I loved that I could code something and see the result directly, as opposed to
Yeah.
when I was in development, I was working on a small part of it. I wasn't really getting to see the whole picture immediately. So I fell in love with it, and now I'm doing more of infrastructure automation kind of thing. So I think there's so much to explore just with automation. So I resonate with what you're saying. I completely agree with that and understand it. So Naomi,
I usually say that working in automation and in the test side is like watching a movie after you read the book. That you can criticize the movie as well, and you can say, no, this is not how I imagine it should be, and this is not how I would have done it. So
hmm
I really like that part. Maybe I'm a little bit of a critic.
no, I agree. So so when someone's preparing for an interview, so how do you think? Uh, what do you think is a good interview preparation strategy? Like how much time should they plan and all those things?
I think that you don't prepare for an interview the day before the interview, or the week before, or 2 weeks
Hmm.
before, or 3 months before. I think you start preparing for an interview when you start anything in your career, when you start studying, when you start working, when you start doing projects. Everything helps you getting prepared, right? It's not, obviously there's some preparation for reviewing concepts or for remembering things that you've done, right, and helping maybe being able to explain yourself better so the interviewers understand where you are. But really, your preparation is all the way through. It's not just before an interview. And I think that's very important. It's just you all the time preparing towards it. It's like when you do exercise, you can't expect to have a perfect body shape one day to the next. It's a process, right? You get into it slowly, and that's the way I see it.
That's a beautiful way of looking at it, and I agree as well. You cannot study something overnight and sound intelligent in the in the interview the next day. You
No
need to
magic
like,
pills.
yeah, like when you're working on something, when you're doing your day-to-day job, it's important for us to understand what we're doing and do it so that we are able to explain it to someone and they're able to understand, you know. So I agree with that. A lot of people think they can just mug up definitions and, you know, go say it. And they even prepare, like even online, if you look for interview preparation question and answers,
Yeah.
they have these exactly definition of API and definition of, you know, different things, and they kind of mug that up and go and say that's not how it works. If you understand what an API is, if you're able to explain to them with an example, then they kind of get an idea that you understand it. You're not just telling me some bullshit reading something
Yeah,
last time.
you may pass an interview like that.
Yes.
Like obviously you're saying exact terminology that they're being used somewhere else or even in the dictionary, so you can
Mm-hmm.
pass an interview like that. But then you won't be able to prove your worth in your job, and I think that's very important because that will affect you somehow at some point, right? It's going to chase you down. So it's better to be honest and to
Mm-hmm.
really go for whatever you've done, and whatever you don't know, you just say you don't know, and that's it, and if you're not the one for the job, it's very unfortunate, but it's the way it is.
That's right. So when someone's preparing for an interview, and you know, if the job description has API, database, UI automation, everything, but if they've not had an experience of doing API automation before, and they see that, you know, most of the job requirements, they need that kind of thing. Now, in that situation, how do they prepare for it? And I think it is okay to work on a personal project with API automation and kind of, you know, speak about it, mention that I don't have working experience, but I've done this project on that. So I'd like to know your opinion on how to build the profile on things that you don't have a working experience on.
So I used to be a really big supporting of doing side projects for staff because
Mm-hmm.
I've done it a lot and I love it doing it, right? Until I get burned out. I really got really badly burned out recently, and
Mm-hmm.
and now that I know how it feels, I cannot really recommend that. It's not for everyone. Sometimes in your life you have the time and the energy and the maybe passion to put into that side
Mm-hmm.
outside of your job. But what I would recommend is trying to see if you can take it to your current job, right? See, there, no one ever is going to tell you, oh, don't do that side project that is going to help the company. No one ever says that, right? They
Yeah.
always like you doing stuff for the company. It's just that instead of maybe try to see if you can actually bring it and bring value out of it for your company, that will be the perfect solution. But sometimes maybe you have other priorities, so you cannot work on that. Okay, then you can work in your side, but always remember that if you are bringing value afterwards to the company, to ask for time off in exchange or some other retribution, so you can actually get something out of that and you don't get burned out. That will be my advice. There's a lot of information online that you can look into, that you can learn more about tools, specific tools for everything, and so there's nothing you can not do, right? The
Mm-hmm.
world is open, and especially nowadays with the pandemic, it's also bringing a lot of new online courses and free conferences and whatnot, right? The possibilities are out there, so you just
Mm-hmm.
have to go and grab them.
That's right. I agree 100% that, you know, the world kind of is all brought together right now with free virtual meetups and conferences and a lot of courses as well. People are releasing for free because they realize that a lot of people are out of jobs and they might, they can probably take advantage and use these courses. So a lot of people are being super nice right now out in the world. So yeah, these are great tips, Noemi. And I agree with the burnout as well. You know, it is possible, like preparing for an interview, that is why a lot of people don't like to do it, because it does take a lot of time and energy and effort to prepare for an interview. That kind of brings me to the next topic of, you know, since it takes so much effort to prepare for an interview and put together things like that, how do we try to identify if a company that we are about to interview for is worth the effort. How do we do our research ahead of time to see if that'll be a good fit for us?
So I've asked many people, precisely that. I've it's something that I've been interested in knowing the input of other people, and they
Mm-hmm.
usually tell me that they go and interview with all companies as a practice. I don't like that. I particularly don't like doing it. If I'm interviewing for a company, I would like to work there.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe more or less than other companies, but I know I'm gonna like it there. So one of the things that I do, I look in the job description. To me, the job itself is more important than the company. The job description can tell me if what I'm going to do is more challenging or not, but everyone has different requirements. So maybe you like to have, I don't know, a swimming pool in a company, right? If that's
Mm-hmm.
your dream, so then maybe you have a shorter pool of companies to try for,
Mm-hmm.
but still you have options, right? So it's just a matter of, as you say, do a research. How can you do a research? So you can go to the website of the company, they will give you some information. You can do to websites like Glassdoor. The Glassdoor give you a lot of information about people that have worked there before,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm sure the other companies, I think Indeed as well, pay scale, they will tell you a lot of different things from companies. So there's many, again, resources online to get that. And obviously, if you know someone that is working there or
Mm-hmm.
has worked there before, that will be your best shot. Um, that said, they always look for someone that is working wherever the location is that you're going to work, especially if it's a multinational company,
Mm-hmm.
because every team is different and every location is different.
That's a
I
good
always
point.
recommend, yeah, I always recommend to check with someone on your location if possible, and don't trust everything, because maybe you see a lot of bad reviews in Glassdoor or something, and then it turns out that they changed the CEO and now it's super good. So
Mm-hmm.
don't fully trust everything, and use your question time to ask and interview your company as
Mm-hmm.
well, so you can get more insights from what they are and how they work and how happy the people inside are.
Yeah, that's a great point. And I usually like to go to the social media pages as well to see kind of the culture of the company. And sometimes, I even reach out to people on LinkedIn, even if I may not know them, if I have some mutual connections, reach out to people to kind of get an idea of what are the values of the company and, how they feel. And a lot of questions you can ask to people directly as opposed to the information that you can sometimes find online. Yep. So,
Definitely, that's a really good point as well.
yeah, thank you for that. So the next thing is right now most of the interviews are happening online because of the pandemic, and many countries are also having like the second wave of lockdown, and things are still in a very different stage. So what are some tips that you'd like to give people for online interviews, more like Zoom interviews and things like that, because it's kind of more different when compared to face-to-face interviews?
Um, to me, one thing that I would recommend, I've been living outside of my country for many years.
Mm-hmm.
So I lived 9 years in Ireland, then I lived a couple of years in China.
Okay.
Then I lived 6 months in Berlin, but I was traveling a lot, so I didn't really get to feel that much. And now I'm back in my own country. And so the one thing I wouldn't recommend people to move during this pandemic, because you're gonna feel more isolated than you usually are, unless you already have friends there, whatnot, right?
Mm-hmm.
But I feel when you move into a new country, it takes a while until you get to know people. So if you're gonna do that, just be really mindful. I was super scared of making a move outside. I finally decided to stay here, and it was a really difficult situation for me, and a really difficult decision, because I I also wanted to be outside. I always work abroad, but I just didn't want to do that in this moment in time.
Mm-hmm.
That's it. That's like a little break from what you were actually asking, right? So you
That's
were
okay.
asking
That's
about
okay. That's
the
interesting.
structure of the interviews itself. So the interviews are really similar to the first phone screen. They usually do a phone screen, maybe do an online one, and then they do one in person. So this will be similar as well, but the one in person will be on the computer. Some people will prefer that, some people will hate that. I'm slightly introverted, so I kind of like that better. But everyone is different, right? The worst thing that I feel that is about it is the whiteboards, because you don't have a whiteboard to explain yourself or to manage to do drawings. So you can use a computer, you can use paint, but it's not the same, or you can use maybe a paper. So be sure that you have the proper equipment as well, because I was using a computer once that I didn't have a mouse, and I was struggling a lot to do an online interview once.
Yeah.
So make sure that you have a good equipment and you have everything ready, have a glass of water. And my biggest advice, do not cheat, because I know some people will tend to do that because they're not looking. So you can have like books and other computers or devices near you. I will not recommend that. I think in the end you just get nervous, and as we say before, then you go to the job and you have to prove yourself. You may not be able to do it, so I wouldn't recommend that. And at the end of the day, it's also similar to the ones in person. When you go in person, they tend to do, I don't know, 3 to 5 maybe interviews, one after the other. It will be the same in a computer. It's just that maybe they break it into 2 days, or do it the same day. Again, it depends on the person. So you could feel like it's better to have it today, so you have a little break, or you can feel like you want to get it done, because otherwise you won't sleep from one day to the next one.
Yeah.
So it depends on the person as well. But I think you can agree with that with the interviewers, and it should be fine.
Okay, perfect. That's cool. So do they still have whiteboard rounds when it comes to online interviews?
Yeah, it's the same as any other in-person interview, whichever. Well, it depends on the company, right? So you can have 3, you can have 5 interviews all in one go, and they do also whiteboard. It depends on the company as well. They may do whiteboard and don't focus so much on that area, or tell you, just to
Type
do a
it
little
out.
bit, type it, or they can just try to focus more on that. I recommend that if you have a piece of paper, you have something opaque behind it, so like a maybe cardboard, something like that, because then the light doesn't go through the paper and they can see it better. And use a thick, don't use a pen, use a thick like ball pen or something like that, thicker, like they can see it properly. Either that, or use something like paint or whatever you have in your computer.
Or maybe like have a real whiteboard behind you and
well, if you have one, great.
Yeah.
Not everyone has a whiteboard.
Yeah, that's true.
I don't know if you will need it outside the interview often, so maybe you don't really need to have one. So whichever, obviously you get to to wherever you want to go, right? So everyone has a different devices. Some people have like how you call it, tablets. That they can draw on it. So that could be another option.
Yeah, but I like the idea of you mentioning have something opaque behind, so that doesn't go through. That's a great handy tip to have. So when people go through interviews, and then if when they get multiple offers, what is your tip to choose one over the other? Like, what do you usually look at?
So what I usually do is I'm honest with them. So if I'm doing interviews, I say I'm doing interviews. If I don't, I say I'm not. Sometimes I start not doing the interviews, but then someone reach out to me, so I end up doing interviews with someone else. And but besides that, just be honest. So I like your offer, I got a better one. Can you match it? Sometimes you have to actually tell, well, this offer is like this. Can you match it for me to go? And also, what do you value more in a company? Is it the challenge? Do you really like this company better than the other for XYZ? If it matches more your career goals, or it matches more what you were looking and hoping to get into, or the location even could be also something that you will say, okay, I really like this one, but this one is located somewhere that is nearer to me or my family, and then I prefer to go to that one, right? So there's a lot of factors to put into, and I recommend you do a list and put everything and figure out what would you ask to each of them in order for you to change your mind, say,
Mm-hmm.
and talk to them, but it's always uncomfortable. It's really uncomfortable because you don't want to look like you're lying to them, and you don't
Mm-hmm.
want to lose an opportunity. But I think it's important to be honest, and in the worst case scenario you always have another one, so it would be very rare that they both drop and say, oh, you asked for something else, so I'm gonna drop. That would be super weird. So just figure what you want and see which one of them will be closer to that. And hopefully in the future you can always try another one if that's what you want to do.
Yeah, and sometimes while going through the interview process, you get a feeling about the people, right? You
Yeah,
can see red flags then and there, and then that also kind of helps you choose between the different
yeah.
offers that you have. Yeah.
I usually like to ask if I'm going to work with the person that I'm interviewing for, because that's also very important, right? To
Yeah.
know if it's just someone that jumped into the process because they needed some skills, or if it's someone that is you're going to be working with, so you
Mm-hmm.
know that person already when you go in. So that's one of the questions I like to ask them.
That's right. That's nice. So, so another question I had for you is, a lot of people have a lot of anxiety around interviews. What are some of your tips for managing the interview anxiety, especially during this time when there's a pandemic and everything is online? And,
Yeah,
some people may feel they're not able to make that real connection also with people.
I'm the first one that get anxiety. I get anxiety a lot, and I've been absolutely blocked for interviews. Sometimes I feel like the interviewer is gonna think that I know absolutely nothing at all because of how blocked I get, and then I'm not able to answer any questions. So that's
Mm-hmm.
really bad, and I struggle with that, and it's not easy at all. But I feel the less I need the job, the less anxiety I get as well.
Mm-hmm.
So I suppose it's good to do an interview. I feel really bad to say this and to do it. If I'm working with a company, do an interview with another one before you actually leave that one. And I usually like taking time off between jobs as well to do a
Mm-hmm.
bit of relax. But sometimes I understand that that's a big situation to be in, because when you already have a job, you don't need to look for another one. Either that, or like do the interview before you need to look for the job. For example, if you want to take, say, I'm willing to take 6 to 12 months off because I want to take time off, right? Then you can start doing the interviews on your fifth, your fourth month, because you don't need it yet. Then when
Mm-hmm.
you're getting closer to your 12th month, you will be anxious, but on that area, maybe you're not yet. So you can take it as a learning, and everything in life is a learning, right? Doing interviews is also a learning. And that's about it. And because we're doing things online, I particularly like putting relaxing music, because you
Mm-hmm.
can put it on your headset and the other person is not going to hear it, but you are hearing it. So that, to me, it helps a lot. But I suppose everyone
Okay.
has their own relaxing things, right? And
Mm-hmm.
remember to take a break and breathe every so often. Because I tend also to speak really fast, and I realize about that in meetings.
Mm-hmm.
So I try to remind myself to take a break, and I have like post-its, take a break, breathe, and that also helps me. But everyone is, as I say, is different.
Yeah, these are good. So another thing that I usually try to do is, I feel like I am the most confident when I'm prepared. So I try to go through my resume and try to prepare for every possible question that can come out of my experience that I should be prepared with, because
Yeah,
this is something that's under my control. So if I'm not, so I should know everything that comes from my resume. So I feel like a preparation kind of makes me a little less anxious. And
that's right. I
also,
agree with that.
yeah, and I also agree with, the more desperate you are to get that job right now, it just feels like you have more pressure on you to try to come across as, always give the right answers and not try to disagree with them. Even if they say something, you kind of have to agree with everything. You have that kind of a pressure in you. So sometimes, yeah, I agree with the fact that, if you're thinking of looking for a job, start looking, start interviewing right away, get some practice, then it's like shopping, start shopping around
Yeah.
and try to get the best one for yourself. Yeah, that's
and
right.
and the same with the companies as well. Maybe you're intimidated by a company and you get more
Mm-hmm.
nervous with them. Like that's something that you have to remind yourself that it's just a company, and at the end of the day they're all the same, and you never know where the company is going to go next. So just try not to think about the company itself. Try to focus on what it is that you can offer to what they are asking on the job description.
Mm-hmm.
And that's another thing that I wanted to mention as well. So if you have two job descriptions, and
Mm-hmm.
one is like you matching every point 100%, and the other you matching 50%, so for which one you have to prepare more? And
50%.
the, the right answer is that you prepare the same for the two of them, because your experience is the same.
Mm-hmm.
So the only difference is that if they say no for the 50%, you're gonna feel less guilty than if they say no for the 100%.
That's
Because
right.
then it means that you didn't prove yourself to them, because the
Yeah.
experience that you have is that. The other one, yeah, maybe they're looking for someone that matches more, and that's understandable. The
Mm-hmm.
same as you shop, they shop, right? So that's
Yeah.
understandable. But if you're not proving yourself, maybe there's where you have a problem, and when you have to even try to figure out how to prepare better. So that one is the one that is going to give you more information, but the
Mm-hmm.
preparation should be the same.
That's right. That's a smart question. Yeah. Um, so another thing that I had was how to deal with interview rejection.
Uh, so yeah, it happens, right? And
Yeah.
as I said before, if you're matching less the points, so maybe you don't feel that bad, because you're like, yeah, well, I was just gambling, sort of, right? Because I didn't know. Sometimes people put more things that they are needed for the actual job. They're like extras, but they put it as they are needed, right? But sometimes they are required for the job. So if you don't have them, that's okay. There's a lot of interviews, and there's other positions even with the same companies that can match better your experience and what you're looking for. But yeah, sometimes it's hard to get a rejection. You never know if it's because of something you did. Maybe you didn't improve yourself. With this pandemic situation, it could be a thing about budget changing, because
Yeah.
there's a lot of companies that are like being really hit bad on the economy side because of this, and maybe they were looking for someone, but then when they're starting and they're getting closer to finding a candidate, they realize that they cannot afford it anymore. But they obviously never gonna say that, because that will look really bad for the company, right? So
That's
no
right.
company is
Yeah.
ever gonna say we are struggling with money. That will be killing yourself as a company, right? They will
Yeah,
be
that's
like
right.
going directly to, because then no one is gonna buy from there, or invest in them. So no one is gonna ever say that, but they may reject you based on that. So don't take it very personal. Sometimes also maybe there's another candidate that matches better all those points, or much able to prove it better than you were, even
Mm-hmm.
if you were both matching it.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe also they could be that maybe the candidate is cheaper than you, or who knows, right? Or they just like it slightly better than you. So don't take it too personal, and just take it as a learning, as I said before, and
Mm-hmm.
just move forward and keep trying. And don't be afraid of trying twice with the same company because they reject you one. That doesn't make any sense, right? Maybe that team or that particular job description wasn't you, but this one is. So you never know, and just keep working towards it.
That's a great point. And I just hope for people that, companies don't just ghost them, because people put a lot of effort in an interview. They take it very seriously, they put in a lot of time. The last thing that a candidate wants is not to hear from them for like weeks and weeks together,
Yes.
because that's very insulting. When someone's put a lot of effort, companies should actually give them some respect and keep them updated, even if they're not able to take a decision. At least let the candidate know that we are still thinking about this, or we're still interviewing
Yeah.
other candidates and
Yeah.
trying to figure it out. So yeah, I hope that doesn't happen to people. I'm sure it happens, but then I hope people don't feel rejected and feel bad
No.
in those situations.
Even if it's a big company, sometimes big companies, they their CVs can get misplaced and whatnot.
Mm-hmm.
So you really never know. So don't take it too personally. Take it as a growth. And if they give you feedback, even better, because then you have something to grow with. But don't take it too much, too hard, because sometimes it's just a matter of not proving something or the other person not feeling you've proved it,
Mm-hmm.
which is also because everything is subjective, right? You're talking to a person, and it's not an exam. It's just a matter of seeing if you like it better or not. There's a lot of feeling involved, because what is it, an hour or half an hour, and you have to get an impression of the other person. It's not
Mm-hmm.
enough.
That's
So
right.
yeah, it's not really good to take it too hard, because then you won't be able to move forward. So take it and move it, and that's it, and keep trying.
That's great. Thank you, Noemi. I think these are great tips. I think this was a great conversation we had, and I
Thank
hope
you.
people were able to get some good tips while they were preparing for interviews. Thank you so much for your time, and this is awesome.
Thank you for having me, and it was great to talk to you as well. It was really
Yeah.
interesting conversation.
Thank you. Thank you so much,
And best of
Noemi.
luck to anyone that is interviewing.
Yes, best of luck to everyone,
Good luck.
and don't lose hope and just keep trying.